I'm Kara Hale-Alter, and I'm the founder and principal trainer for Speech Skills. Whether you're talking one-on-one with customers, interacting with colleagues in the boardroom, or giving a formal presentation, your communication skills have a big impact on your success. Because you've taken the initiative to watch this video, it's clear that you already have a strong desire to improve your skills. And now you need practical steps to take you there. In each section of this video, I'll focus on a specific communication skill. I'll start with a brief overview of the behavior and the impact that it has, and then I'll give you several practicing strategies, exercises, games, and drills for either correcting a bad habit or developing a good one. It's important to note that the most effective way to work on these skills is to practice them in your real-world situations. But for most people, the biggest hurdle is the distraction that comes from trying to focus on a new skill and putting your thoughts together at the same time. So these exercises are designed to give you an intermediate step, a way to practice on your own, a way to gain aptitude before you test them out in your more important conversations. When watching this video, feel free to jump around and focus on those skills that are of most importance to you. However, I highly recommend that you begin with the Getting Started section. This will give you several suggestions for practicing no matter what skill you're working on. So let's get started. When it comes to improving your speaking skills, there is simply no substitute for practice. Speaking is a physical act. You want to get these skills into your muscle memory. The good news is that if you put in the practice time, progress will be inevitable. It's good to start by creating an action plan. You'll find more information about putting one together in your workbook, though here are some things to keep in mind. Go through this video and choose the top 3 skills that you want to work on, your highest priorities. If you don't know where to begin, may I suggest that you start by developing strong posture, strong volume, and strong eye contact. These are the 3 pillars of effective communication. Next, take a look at the practicing strategies in each area and choose exercises that look like they'll work for you. And this is an important point. Choose something that you can actually see yourself following through on. Feel free to change the exercise in any way to make it work better for either your style or your situation. Next, commit to a specific time to focus on your skills. When are you going to practice? Tonight after dinner? Tomorrow during the commute to work? At Tuesday's staff meeting? The more clearly you pinpoint a specific time, the more likely you are to follow through. Once you have an action plan, it's good to keep the following suggestions in mind. It's best to test your new skills in a low-risk environment when you can afford to explore. Changing any habit feels odd, maybe even unnatural at first, but keep at it. The more you do it, the more natural it will feel. When you are practicing, give your full attention to one skill at a time. You may have a list of several skills that you want to improve. You don't have to master one before you move on to the next. You can alternate between them. But for better effectiveness, at any given moment, focus on just one. For most skills, it's much better to practice for a short period of time often, say 5 minutes a couple of times a day, than to practice for a long period of time less frequently. And the more often you focus on a skill in a deliberate practice session, the more attentive you'll be to that skill in your everyday life. Even though these materials are designed for self-study, you will probably advance faster if you work with a partner. These skills are about communication, so it's really helpful to have an actual human being to work with. Also, if you make a commitment to someone else, you're much more likely to practice. But most importantly, a partner can be an outside eye to either remind you to focus on the skill or to let you know if a bad habit is creeping into your style. And don't forget to play games. In the animal kingdom, young animals learn the skills they need to survive by playing. They're driven to play because it's fun. So instead of seeing playing games as a frivolous or superficial activity, see it as an entertaining way to learn new skills. I especially like board games that have a strong verbal component like Taboo or Balderdash. Any game where you have to talk to each other to reach the objective. Pick any skill from this video and focus on it while playing with friends and family. They don't need to know that you're working on your skills, but you'll have a safe environment in which to practice. Speaking with a strong, confident voice starts with proper breath support. Some problems associated with improper breath support are soft volume, inconsistent volume, and that's when I start out strong but then trail off at the end of my sentence, and talking in the back of the throat or resting on the larynx. A voice that isn't supported can sound timid or tired or disengaged. The more energy you put into your breath, the more energized you'll sound. In this section, we'll focus in 4 areas, with one building on the other. First, breathe from your abdominals. Then, engage your diaphragm. Then, use the diaphragm to increase your volume. And finally, develop vocal stamina so that your voice is consistently strong and supported. When we are relaxed, just simply breathing to sustain life, watching TV or sleeping, we breathe into the abdominal area. When we breathe in, it fills up with air and gets bigger, and when we breathe out, the air is released and it gets smaller. But under stress, our abdominals tend to tense up, and we kick into thoracic breathing or rib cage breathing. This is panic breathing. It's important to learn to intentionally bring your breath back into the abdominal area. Now try this. Think of this area like a big balloon. Breathe in and let it expand, and breathe out and let it flatten. Try not to let your shoulders rise and fall, and let go of whatever ego you may have about this area. Keep these muscles loose and relaxed. When practicing, you'll breathe in, breathe out, and there'll be a slight pause. Then breathe in, breathe out, slight pause. Do this anytime you have a few extra minutes, sitting at your desk, driving to work, or falling asleep at night. By focusing on abdominal breathing several times a day, your body will respond more readily to your commands to relax in stressful situations. Your diaphragm is the muscle responsible for volume. If your volume is weak or inconsistent, you haven't been contracting your diaphragm with the kind of gusto that's required. To identify what it feels like to engage your diaphragm, try this. Say shh fairly forcefully, as if you're trying to get the attention of someone in the next room. Shh. Now hold it out for 3 seconds or so. Shh. Could you feel how the muscle under your rib cage contracted each time? That's your diaphragm. To give your diaphragm a little exercise, try saying the days of the week all in one breath. It's important to draw out the vowels so that the diaphragm can't rest in between each word. It might sound like this: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., all the way through Sunday. Once you've done that a couple of times, try saying the months of the year, all in one breath. Now that you've got your diaphragm engaged, let's use it to increase volume. Try counting from 1 to 5, again, all in one breath, getting incrementally louder with each word. Say 1 as if you're speaking to someone just 2 feet away. Then gradually increase your volume so that at 5, it's as if you're speaking to someone 20 feet away. It might sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, an important caution here: don't let your pitch go up when you increase your volume. An increase in pitch means that there's added tension in your larynx. Keep your throat relaxed so that instead of 5, you'll say 5. Now try the same exercise using simple sentences like, "Hey, you dropped your hat," or "My car is at the shop." Say it once as if to someone 5 feet away, then 10 feet away, then 20 feet away. And make sure not to let your pitch rise when you increase your volume. All of the extra effort for volume should come from contracting your diaphragm. Keeping your voice consistently strong and supported takes stamina. You'll need to get this muscle into shape. Here are some exercises to help you do that. One of the best ways to build stamina is to read out loud for 5 or 10 minutes a day, focusing on keeping your diaphragm active so that each word is supported by a flow of air. You can even increase the workload by pretending that you're reading to someone in the next room, or turn on the radio or TV and try to be heard above the noise. Of course, be sure to keep your larynx relaxed so that it's your diaphragm that's putting in the extra effort. You can also develop breath support by saying the following list, adding a word each time. I went to the store and bought some eggs. I went to the store and bought some eggs and milk. I went to the store and bought some eggs, milk, and cheese. I went to the store and bought some eggs, milk, cheese, and butter. Be sure to emphasize the final word in each phrase to keep your diaphragm engaged all the way to the end. If you have the tendency to trail off at the ends of your sentences, it's likely that you're running out of air but continuing to talk anyway. You'll need to break that habit by breathing more often. Choose something to read, like a passage from a novel or a magazine article, and draw a slash mark at every natural pause. Commas and periods are a good indication of a natural pause. Now read the passage aloud, intentionally breathing at every slash mark. You want to train yourself to breathe before you run out of air so that your voice can stay full. Articulation is the ability to clearly enunciate the sounds of speech. It requires great flexibility from your lips, tongue, teeth, and jaw. The sharper your articulation, the more intelligent and attentive to detail you'll come across. Improving your articulation is all about muscle memory, getting your muscles to habitually work in a more rigorous way. The only way to do that is to regularly put these muscles through a workout. The quick fix for improving your articulation is simply to open your mouth wider. Just by focusing on this one solution, you may take your articulation from average to good. But if you want to take this skill to excellent, here are some things to keep in mind. In the workbook materials, you'll find a page titled Articulation Workout. When practicing these drills, follow these guidelines. Try not to separate out each word. Articulating a word cleanly in isolation is easy. For example, the word good. It's moving from one word to the next that's hard. Good blood, bad blood. The real trick is to hit your consonants cleanly while keeping the flow. Also, don't confuse articulation for stress. Sometimes when someone is working on articulation, they start to add more emphasis or stress. If that happens for you, put all of your attention back into your mouth and isolate the extra effort right here in these muscles. Here's how a practice session might go. Start by warming up. These exercises are in the workbook, but they might look a little bit like this. Scrunch up your face, smooch, sneer, move your tongue all around, blow through your lips. It's kind of like warming up clay before you start to sculpt with it. Do these for a minute or two. Next, say each of the articulation drills 2 or 3 times. Hit every consonant as cleanly as possible. Put all of the focus into how the words feel in your mouth. Start by over-articulating each word. Topeka, bodega, topeka, bodega. Then try to say the phrases as fast as possible while still keeping your attentiveness to each consonant. Topeka, bodega, topeka, bodega, topeka, bodega. If you start to slur the sounds or trip up, be sure to slow back down again. An excellent way to retrain your articulator muscles is to make them work over time. Take a stir stick or a pencil and grip it in between your front teeth. Run yourself through the articulation drills. Or try having a conversation with someone, making sure that each word is understandable. Even though it may seem silly, it's perhaps the fastest way to improve your articulation. Next, practice reading out loud. Poetry, prose, the newspaper, it doesn't matter, but do it every day. And focus on hitting every consonant of every word cleanly. If you have young people in your life that like to be read to, this can be a mutually beneficial exercise. Another fun drill is to work with a partner and whisper to each other from about 20 feet away. Say simple phrases like, "I'm happy to see you," and see if your partner can lip read what you're saying. You'll probably find that it helps if you open your mouth wider. The quick fix for improving your articulation. The most common problem with pacing is the tendency to speak too quickly. If this is true for you, slowing down will help you appear more in command of the message, give you more time to collect your thoughts, and make it easier to eliminate uhs and ums. More importantly, it allows your audience more time to digest your message. The quickest and easiest way to get yourself to slow down is to focus on your articulation. Whenever you catch yourself speaking too quickly, bring your attention to crisply enunciating your words. Your muscles will naturally have to slow down to meet the need. The added bonus here is that, typically, people who speak too quickly also tend to have sloppier articulation. It's good to start with a self-evaluation. Test your typical words per minute. A comfortable listening pace is about 170 words per minute. To get an idea of what you tend to do, go to the pacing section of your workbook and locate the test paragraphs. Each one should take about 60 seconds to complete when reading aloud. Time yourself to see how your pacing compares. If your pace is more than just a few seconds fast or slow, practice reading the paragraphs until you can more closely match a 60-second pace. Also, try this test in reverse. Record yourself while explaining a simple task to someone, how to make a sandwich or how to change a light bulb. Transcribe a 60-second sample and count your words. One way to slow down your pace is to add a 2-second pause at the end of each thought. To practice this, give yourself an impromptu question, snapping twice between each sentence. If you have difficulty doing this, have a friend snap for you. To you, the pause may seem unbearably long, but to the audience, it seems very conversational. The idea here is to change the rhythm of your speech, to get comfortable with a little more empty space. And finally, if you'd like to have a little fun, here's one way to test how long you can pause without it being uncomfortable for the listener. Sometime, when talking with a friend in casual conversation, intentionally make your pauses longer and longer. You might be surprised how long you can go until they notice. Having a wide range of expression and variety in your voice will help you to come across as more personable and dynamic. The primary components of vocal expression are pace, pitch, inflection, and stress. If you use these elements effectively, people will better understand and retain your message. However, having a lot of expression in your voice without any real meaning is like newscasters who have to have variety without expressing an opinion. That's not what you're going for. You want to strive for authenticity, with your expression closely linked to your meaning. These exercises can help you to break out of old patterns and increase your overall flexibility. Choose a paragraph of material to work with, a passage from a novel, poetry, even a newspaper article, and read it out loud several times, each time focusing on a different element of expression. First, read your paragraph paying attention to your pace. Speed up, slow down, change your rate of speech many times. Draw out some phrases and make others short and crisp. And add lots of pauses, even at odd places within the sentence structure. Now, play with your pitch range. Use as wide a scale as you can, sometimes high and sometimes low. And within each sentence, intentionally use as many different pitches as possible. While pitch is the changing of tone from word to word, inflection is changing tone within a word. The more inflection, the more emphasis. Like if I say the word no. If the pitch change is subtle, it has one level of meaning, and if it's more drastic, it has another. No. No. It's true for upward inflection as well. Really? Really? Play with your inflection and see if you can give your speech a little more emphasis. Finally, focus on stress. You can stress a word or phrase by increasing the volume, articulating more crisply, giving the word a pause on either side, or drawing out the vowel to hold it a little longer. The stress you bring to the sentence dramatically changes the meaning. Take the phrase, he put the book on my desk. 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 Now, use a pen to highlight at least one word in every sentence of your practice paragraph. Then read the piece aloud, being sure to give each highlighted word a little extra emphasis. One function of your vocal expression is to translate the emotional subtext of your message. Open, dynamic speakers freely move through different moods within the conversation. Yet some speakers are very under the radar, not giving out too much information about how they feel about their message. If you'd like to appear more passionate and connected to your topic, you may need to get comfortable with a wider emotional range. One way to do that is to go to extremes. Try saying a simple phrase like, "I had no idea this was so important," conveying a different emotion each time, like surprise. "I had no idea this was so important," or sarcasm. "I had no idea this was so important," or fear, or self-doubt, or indignation, or playfulness. Try this with a partner and see if they can guess which emotion you are trying to convey. You'll find a list of emotions in your workbook materials. Another way to stretch your emotional range is to imitate a passionate character. Try rehearsing your message, whether it's a sales presentation or a budget proposal, in the style of a carnival barker, or a fiery preacher on the pulpit, or an impassioned political activist with a life-saving message. Once you've stretched over the top, you'll find bringing more expression to your style a little more comfortable. Open, direct eye contact can give the impression that you are confident, credible, and committed. Most people have one-on-one eye contact pretty much figured out. The harder skill is making eye contact with a group, whether you're sitting in a conference room or giving a formal presentation. Here are 4 steps to learning effective eye contact. First, learn to hold eye contact for 3 to 5 seconds per person. You want to have an individual conversation with each person you're looking at. And even if from your point of view it may seem like a long time, from the listener's point of view, it's pretty conversational. If it's a very large group, hold eye contact with sections of the room for 3 to 5 seconds. Second, be sure to engage the entire room. I call this the cattle dog theory. Just as cattle dogs are constantly tending to the sheep to keep them rounded up, they're here, then here, then here. Do the same with your eye contact. Instead of moving narrowly from this person to this person to this person, use a much broader range. You're over here, then back there, so that no part of the room goes too long without some attention from you. Third, keep your attention on the audience the entire time. I call this keeping the ball in play. Here's an example of me dropping the ball. I'm talking with this person and then I drop the ball for just a second, and then I'm over here with this person and then I drop the ball and then I'm over here. You want to keep your energy on the audience the entire time, because when your eyes drop, the energy in the room also drops. Finally, engage them. Elicit a response from them. True connected eye contact is not merely looking in their direction. You need to really see them out there so that they know you see them and you invite them to respond to you. To do this, you must interact with them. And certainly you can interact verbally by asking questions or using their names or asking them to paraphrase back to you what is important to them. But don't underestimate the power of non-verbally eliciting a response. For example, right now I'm looking straight at the camera, so I'm making very strong eye contact with you, but I'm not interacting with you at all. And now I am interacting with you. And I can do this by perhaps reaching in your direction or nodding or raising my eyebrows or any number of subtle facial gestures that let you know that this is a conversation and not a lecture. Part of developing effective eye contact is just learning the choreography of looking around the room and holding eye contact for 3 to 5 seconds. To practice, try this drill. Put Post-it notes up on the walls of your office or your living room. Give yourself an impromptu question and hold eye contact with each Post-it note for 3 to 5 seconds. You can do this exercise standing or seated, but let your sentence structure cue your rhythm. Deliver a phrase to one spot, and then when you get to the comma or pause in the phrase, turn and look at the next spot. Try not to follow a pattern. Shift randomly so that you can practice keeping the entire room engaged. One problem that you might experience when first focusing on eye contact is the voice inside your head that says things like, "Wow, this is distracting to hold eye contact for so long," or, "Gee, it's hard to think and make eye contact at the same time." The bottom line, it's that voice that's distracting, not the eye contact. In one-on-one conversation, we make eye contact for 15, 20 seconds at a stretch without feeling the least bit uncomfortable. And most people say that they think more clearly in one-on-one conversations than in groups. The biggest difference is that in one-on-one conversation, we aren't paying attention to our eye contact. We're just doing what comes naturally. So the skill to practice is being intentional about eye contact without letting it distract you. And the best way to do this? Practice in low-risk settings, like with your friends and family. The next time you're at lunch with friends or sitting around the living room chatting with your family, focus on holding eye contact with them for 3 to 5 seconds per person. They don't need to know that you're working on eye contact, but you'll have a chance in a low-risk setting to multitask between focusing on eye contact and putting your thoughts together at the same time. The final and most important step to learning eye contact is to truly engage your audience. One hurdle you may need to get over is that vulnerable feeling that happens when initiating eye contact. Take a field trip to the mall. Make it a point to initiate eye contact with every retail clerk or service person that you see. Ask for directions or a restaurant recommendation from another shopper, and see if you can get that person to make eye contact with you. What would you have to do to get them to really look at you? You'd have to really look at them. Part of getting your audience to look at you is to put out the invitation, and this is one way to practice. Since the first thing that people notice about you is the visual image, the strength of your stance can have a big impact on how much personal power you appear to carry around. If you'd like people to describe you as balanced, level-headed, and straightforward, make sure to stand that way. The good news for developing this skill is that you have hundreds of opportunities throughout the day to practice. Let's start by identifying what strong posture looks like. To find your optimal standing posture, stand with your weight balanced equally over both feet. Your feet should be directly underneath your hip joints. You want your spine to be as tall as it can be without any extra tension. And your chin should be level, so rather than thinking chin up, think about keeping your neck long in the back. See if you can keep your trunk stable while you pick up your hands and let them test out this area in front of you. Make sure that your arms aren't pinned to your sides or held out in space. Just let them hang loosely from your shoulder joints. You want your hands and arms to move freely without much reverberation in your shoulders. You also want to be able to look around the room without twisting in your torso. Your head should work like a camera on a tripod. You can easily look over here or look over there, but your base stays solid. The best time to practice your stance is in your everyday life. The next time you're standing in the hallway talking with colleagues, stand in a balanced position. When you're ordering your coffee from the coffee bar, stand in a balanced position. When you're asking for assistance from the clerk at Nordstrom, stand in a balanced position. Try to resist the temptation to reposition your feet or to fidget, even when they are talking. Make this your home base. Get comfortable standing like this in your everyday interactions so that it doesn't feel strange or vulnerable when it counts, like when you're giving a presentation or greeting your customer or client. It's also helpful to practice your stance while you're talking on the phone. Try wearing a headset. Stand in a balanced position with your spine strong and try to stay in that position for several minutes at a stretch. You may even want to practice engaging your gestures on purpose. One positive result is that your listener is likely to find your conversation a lot more lively and engaging. Effective movement at the front of the room can give the impression that you are fluid, at ease, and that you're comfortable taking charge of the room. When it comes to developing this skill, there is really no substitute for getting up and trying it on your feet. Here are some things to keep in mind. There are 4 basic ground rules to movement. First, wherever you go, stand still when you get there. If I want to move over here, no problem. I just need to stand still when I get here. Being fluid is good, but you also want to give the impression that you are stable and grounded. Second, try not to move any more than every paragraph or so. That's about every 45 seconds or a minute. It would be okay to stand still for 10 minutes at a stretch, but if you are going to move, do it no more than every paragraph or so. Next, move on the initiation of the thought. This works very well with the every paragraph rule. When you're moving on to a new idea in your presentation, feel free to move to a new location. And finally, keep your body open to the entire audience. If you're moving to the other side of the room, just make sure when you plant yourself, you open your body up to the whole room. If you plant yourself on an angle like this, these folks over here might feel subtly ignored or cold-shouldered. Better to open up. When it comes to movement, all of the strategies I'm about to cover fall into the category of learn and forget. You don't want someone to be paying attention to your technique. The goal is to practice these skills to get them into your muscle memory, and then when you're at the front of the room, trust yourself. Just do what feels right. Here's a technique for effective movement in front of a large room. When you want to move in this direction, make eye contact with someone over here, move toward them, and as soon as you get here, square off and include this side of the room. You've just moved away from them. You want to make sure to include them back into the conversation. Then, of course, you would stand still for at least a paragraph or so, making eye contact randomly around the room. And then when you're ready to move again, make eye contact with someone on this side of the room, move toward them, and as soon as you square off, make sure to include this side of the room. When you're giving a presentation in a small room with perhaps a conference room table in front of you, you want to be fluid without being too broad. Try the technique I call the two-step. It's just one step, two steps, and stop. Then you'd stay here for at least a paragraph or so. Then, one step, two steps, and stop. It will give you a chance to look relaxed and comfortable without taking up too much space. One thing to note is that I'm moving in a small semicircle. My first step is actually slightly behind me so that I don't continue to move closer and closer to my audience. Here are some things to pay attention to when you're practicing on your own. First, keep your eyes up when moving. I often see people looking down when they're walking. You want to keep your eyes on your listeners the entire time. For more information on this, check out my section on eye contact drills. Also, watch your sight lines and keep an appropriate distance from your audience. A good rule of thumb is to keep the extremes of your audience at about 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. If you move forward so that they are at about 9 and 3, they may feel as if you're encroaching on their space. However, if you pull back so that they're at about 11 and 1, they may feel as if you're being distant. 10 and 2 is best. Also, avoid creeping sideways, taking little shuffle steps. If you're going to go somewhere, point your shoulders in that direction and go there. Then, of course, square off when you get there. And by the way, smaller steps tend to appear more natural and comfortable from the listener's point of view. And finally, lead with your hand. If you'd like to move, but you're having trouble getting yourself to go anywhere, try leading with your hands. By reaching in this direction, you might convince your feet to follow along. The question I hear most often in my workshop is, what do I do with my hands? In everyday life, we don't give our hands much thought. They are effortlessly engaged in the conversation. But when we're feeling self-conscious, it's like we have big platters on the ends of our arms and we just don't know what to do with them. Here's the problem. If your hands are stiff or uninvolved, you may look guarded or too formal. But if your gesturing is too deliberate, you might look unnatural. The challenge is to get your hands to do what they normally do. You don't need to learn how to gesture, you do it every day. The skill to develop is the ability to transition from thinking about your hands to not thinking about your hands. To practice this, you may have to start thinking about your hands more often. First, the ground rules. Whether you are standing or seated, effective gesturing takes place in the gesture box, and that's about from your sternum forward to your hip joints. And the bullseye, or the sweet spot, is your belly button or your belt buckle. Comfortable gesturing tends to start from here. It's okay to rest your hands when you're not using them, as long as there's no tension or gripping. In order to practice going from conscious to unconscious gesturing, you'll need to kickstart your hands. Intentionally get them up and into the gesture box. Try reciting nursery rhymes or song lyrics and get your hands to gesture along in a conversational style. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, that lamb was sure to go. You may even multitask. Run yourself through some articulation exercises and invite your hands to gesture along. Topeka bodega, Topeka bodega, Topeka bodega. If you're stuck in a pattern of repetitive gestures, try doing the last exercise while adding some variety to your repertoire. If you tend to gesture in an up and down pattern, try to move your hands side to side for a while. If you tend to have very large gestures, try to keep your hands in a much smaller box. If you tend to be symmetrical, with both hands doing the same thing, try letting one hand talk for a while and then let the other have a try. And most importantly, if you tend to only use outward bound gestures, learn to turn them around so that you can begin to pull people toward you rather than pushing them away. Try to notice your gestures in your everyday conversations. Bring your attention to your hands when you're chatting at lunch or standing around the proverbial water cooler. And whenever you happen to notice someone else's gestures, take that as an opportunity to pay attention to your own. Of course, whenever you have a big presentation coming up, make yourself stand up and practice. Your entire body will be delivering the presentation, so you better make your entire body practice it. Begin in an open, balanced stance, and practice reaching toward your audience to welcome them during your opening remarks. Non-fluencies are the uhs and ums in our speech. Filler words are, kind of, sort of, actually, basically, I mean, right, okay. Even and so can be fillers if we overuse them. The biggest issue with this behavior is that we as speakers tend to be blissfully unaware that we have this verbal clutter in our language. It's best to start with some self-evaluation. Record yourself the next time you're in a small group meeting, or record your end of a telephone conversation. Then count your non-fluencies. If you have more than one or two per paragraph, that's too many. Or if you use the same filler word more than just a couple of times in any conversation, that's too many. Getting rid of this problem takes dedicated attention. You must first raise your awareness and then replace the pattern. Ultimately, you want to train yourself to simply leave a pause instead of interjecting an or a filler word. If you're serious about eliminating your fillers, it's best to practice for a few minutes a couple of times a day. The more you bring your focus to this problem in practice sessions, the more attentive you'll be in your everyday speech. The quickest and most effective way to get rid of the non-fluencies is to enlist the help of an outside ear. Ask a friend or a family member, and children are especially good at this, to give you a signal every time they hear you use an or an or your favorite filler word. But I need to warn you, while this is the most effective way, it can also be the most irritating. Another highly effective exercise is the flag game. Sit across from someone who perhaps also wants to work on this problem and take turns talking for 2 minutes while the other person listens for and flags your uhs and ums. When it's your turn to speak, try not to react to the flag by going, ooh or ouch. Just notice it and keep going. There will be a part of your brain working very hard to avoid the flag. Why should you talk for 2 minutes at a stretch? Because it's hard. You'll likely have moments when you're searching for what to say next. And that's when we tend to have more uhs and ums. If you play this game regularly, pretty soon you'll get good at it. Keep at it until you can easily get through 2 minutes without a single flag. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't still have uhs and ums in your everyday speech. It just means that when you're thinking about it, you can eliminate them. And that's the first step to getting rid of them for good. A more challenging way of working on eliminating your non-fluencies is to try doing it while playing board games. My favorite game is Taboo. In this game, you're trying to get your partner to guess the word at the top of the card. This word happens to be penguin. Below, there are 5 words I can't use when describing that. I can't say bird, tuxedo, black, white, cold. For this card, I might say something like, this is a type of flightless fowl, and it can be found in Antarctica, and its color scheme is like a zebra. By this time, you'll likely be shouting out penguin. You lose points if you say one of the taboo words. I suggest that you play it so that you lose a point if you say or as well. Since we tend to have more uhs and ums when we're searching for what to say, this game gives you plenty of time to practice because it's all about searching for the next word. Once you have some control over your non-fluencies, practice by talking to yourself. Next time you're driving along in the car, give yourself an impromptu question and intentionally eliminate any extraneous fillers. And finally, make it your goal when leaving phone messages to eliminate all uhs and ums. Most phone systems will let you listen to your message and re-record if you hit the star key. Most people are familiar with the fight or flight response, that rush of adrenaline that prepares us to either fight for our lives or run for our lives when we're feeling a little threatened. Though not as well known, there is another chemical at work in our bodies when we're under stress: oxytocin. We all have both adrenaline and oxytocin in our system. Oxytocin is the friendship chemical, and when it's released under stress, it's called the tend and befriend response. As a protective measure, it drives us to make friends with the enemy, to send a message that says, "I'm really no threat to you." And for many people, this results in the smiling mask. The quick fix for getting rid of the smiling mask is simply to relax. Relax your face anytime you notice a locked-on smile. However, for most people, that's easier said than done. The real cure for this behavior is to desensitize yourself by deliberately seeking out situations that cue the response. If you're like most people, it's most prominent when you are introducing yourself. Also when you're giving feedback, or asking for special consideration, or seeking approval for an idea or a proposal. In short, when you are drawing attention to yourself. Take a field trip to the mall, or any place where you'll have the chance to interact with many new people. Every time you interact with a clerk, focus on keeping your face relaxed. Then branch out. Ask another shopper for directions or for a restaurant recommendation. See if you can be very pleasant without actually smiling at the person. Finally, if you really want to test your ability to control the smile response, return something you've purchased or give the waiter a special instruction for your meal, all the while keeping your face relaxed. Once you've practiced in low-risk situations, it's time to try this out with your coworkers. Choose a situation that feels just slightly risky, like initiating a conversation with someone that you hold in high regard, or giving some lightweight feedback to a coworker, or giving a compliment to a supervisor. As always, the goal is to practice being friendly and approachable without relying on the smiling mask. When communicating in a business setting, it's helpful to be level-headed, both literally and figuratively. Tilting your head can soften your overall image so that you might look shy or less self-assured. An extraneous movement can be distracting. Typically, the person who has too much head movement tends to be very expressive, an example of a good skill taken one step too far. The trick is to retrain your muscle memory to keep your head still and level without losing your animation or energy. Here are some ways to go about it. One of the best ways to train your muscle memory is a game I call Knock Your Socks Off. Fold up a good thick pair of socks and put them on your head to see if you can talk for several minutes without letting them fall off. Note that I can easily look around the room to address someone on this side or on this side, but as soon as I have any bobbling or tilting, the socks drop. If you're shy about practicing this in front of other people, try the sock drill on the phone. Call up a friend or colleague with the intention of having a lively, energetic conversation. Balance your focus between keeping your head level and being expressive so that you can do both at the same time. Often when I'm working with someone on keeping more stillness in the head, the entire body becomes stiff and restricted. Be sure to encourage your hands to stay fluid and engaged. Also, with so much attention on keeping the head still, a speaker might start to look at people out of the corner of his or her eyes. Be sure to point your nose directly at whomever you're speaking to. An upward inflection, which sounds like a question mark at the end of your sentence, can give the impression that you're seeking approval or that you aren't as committed or mature as you might like to come across. To correct a habitual pattern of ending phrases and sentences in an upward flow, you must first become more aware of when it happens, and then replace that pattern with a downward inflection. The first step is retraining your ear. You want to be able to distinguish the difference between an upward inflection and a downward inflection, and to do either on purpose. Start by using a downward inflection at the ends of isolated words. Try counting from 1 to 20 and listen to how the final sound of each number dips downward. 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. If you find this easy to do, then try to alternate between upward inflections and downward inflections so that you can do either one on purpose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now practice on random words. Look around the room and name what you see using a downward inflection. Book, computer, telephone. And here's the important next step. Put each word at the end of a sentence. I like this book. This is my computer. I have to answer the telephone. Now, take it one step further. Say any sentence, downwardly pitching each word that has more than 2 syllables. I'm working on my downward inflections. I'd like to become a better speaker. In normal conversation, it would sound like this. I'm working on my downward inflections. I'd like to become a better speaker. One pattern that I see with speakers who consistently end in an upward inflection is that they start the sentence low and end in a high pitch. I put a lot of energy into this project. I'm pleased with the results. Try reversing the pattern. Start high and end low. I've put a lot of energy into this project. I'm very pleased with the results. Now try all of the drills I've just covered while reading aloud. And focus on keeping a lively, expressive tone. Change pitch, add stress, emphasize important words, but without the crutch of an upward inflection. One important issue that deserves special note. I often hear the upward pattern most prominently in introductions when the speaker is welcoming the audience or stating his or her credentials. My name is Kara Hale-Alter, and I'm with Speech Skills. Take a moment right now to write out your credentials. Write your name, department, job title, how long you've been with the company, and the vital role that you play, and practice saying all of that logistical information with a confident downward inflection. As listeners, we don't just hear the words of the speaker, we read the face of the speaker. Facial animation tells us the emotional subtext, like how committed the speaker is or how important the message is. Increasing your facial fluidity will not only give your message more impact, it will help you to come across as more approachable and more engaged. To increase your animation, it's helpful to start with some self-evaluation. Analyze your face in the mirror. Compare how your face feels when being expressive to how it looks. Practice smiling. Try at first a slight smile, and then a normal smile, and then a broad smile. Then turn away from the mirror and try those positions again, paying close attention to how they feel. Next, analyze your face when relaxed. When you completely let go of any tension in your face, does the expression look neutral, or pleasant, or stern? If when completely relaxed, your mouth tends to curve downward, you may be sending unapproachable signals without knowing it. Finally, try on different expressions: happiness, sadness, surprise, disgust, fear, skepticism. Compare how they look to how they feel. Continuing to use the mirror as a way to self-monitor, practice talking through a business message. Imagine that your audience is only seeing the visual picture. Is it sufficiently interesting to hold their attention? Then intentionally increase your level of expression in your face and your body language. Then turn away from the mirror and practice delivering the same message at the same level of animation. Increasing your facial animation does not mean plastering a smile on your face when you speak. It's the active fluidity of your face that's important. However, there is no getting past the fact that a smile is a universal gesture of friendliness. So if you'd like to appear more approachable as well as more expressive, you might want to incorporate more friendship signals into your style. What are friendship signals? A pleasant expression, a smile, a nod, raising your eyebrows, opening your eyes wider, gesturing inclusively, and reaching toward your audience. When you're greeting an individual or an audience, initiate the friendship by sending out these signals. Here's a way to put those skills into practice. Spend an entire weekend consciously greeting everyone you meet with a smile. Friends, family members, neighbors, of course, but make sure to get out of the house so that you can come into contact with plenty of waiters, retail clerks, and shoppers. Make it your mission for an entire weekend to smile at everyone you meet. It might feel forced at first, but stick with it. The more you do it, the more natural it will feel. In this video, we focused on specific behaviors that can increase your effectiveness. The good news about improving your speaking skills is that all it takes is practice. The bad news is that it takes practice. However, the more you intentionally focus on a skill, the more that skill will be incorporated in your natural style. Ultimately, you want these behaviors to be habitual so that you don't have to think about them at all. Imagine how it would feel to make strong eye contact, have confident posture, speak without any uhs and ums, all as a matter of habit. That's how you differentiate yourself in the workplace. Consistently strong communication skills. So that even if the stakes are high, even if you're thinking on your feet, even if you have some adrenaline in your system, your good skills are a part of your everyday style. To get there, I suggest you take the time to examine your patterns, create an action plan, and get to work. Good luck.